Ezekiel chapters 47 through 48. Then he brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and there was water flowing from under the threshold of the temple toward the east. For the temple faced east. The water was coming down from under the south side of the threshold of the temple, south of the altar. Next, he brought me out by way of the north gate, and led me around the outside of the outer gate that faced east. There, water was trickling from the south side. As the man went out east with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1/3 of a mile and led me through the water. It came up to my ankles. Then he measured off 1/3 of a mile and led me through the water. It came up to my knees. He measured off another 1/3 of a mile and led me through the water. It came up to my waist. Again he measured off 1/3 of a mile, and it was a river that I could not cross on foot, for the water had risen. It was deep enough to swim in, a river that could not be crossed on foot. He asked me, "Do you see this, son of man?" Then he led me back to the bank of the river. When I had returned, I saw a very large number of trees along both sides of the river bank. He said to me, "This water flows out to the eastern region and goes down to the Arabah. When it enters the sea of foul water, the water of the sea becomes fresh. Every kind of living creature that swarms will live wherever the river flows, and there will be a huge number of fish because this water goes there. Since the water will become fresh, there will be life everywhere the river goes. Fishermen will stand beside it from En-gedi to Eneglaim. These will become places where nets are spread out to dry. Their fish will consist of many different kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea. Yet its swamps and marshes will not be healed. They will be left for salt. All kinds of trees providing food will grow along both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither and their fruit will not fail. Each month they will bear fresh fruit because the water comes from the sanctuary. Their fruit will be used for eating and their leaves for healing. This is what the Lord God says. This is the border you will use to divide the land as an inheritance for the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph will receive 2 shares. You will inherit it in equal portions, since I swore to give it to your ancestors, so that this land will fall to you as an inheritance. This is to be the border of the land. On the north side it will extend from the Mediterranean Sea by the way of the Hethlon and Lebo-hamath to Zedad, Berothah, and Sibraim, which between the border of Damascus and the border of Hamath, which is between the border of Damascus and the border of Hamath, as far as Hazar Hattikon, which is on the border of Haran. So the border will run from the sea to the Hazar-Renon at the border of Damascus, with the territory of Hamath to the north. This will be the northern side. On the east side, it will run between Haran and Damascus, along the Jordan between Gilead and the land of Israel. You will measure from the northern border to the eastern sea. This will be the eastern side. On the south side, it will run from Tamar to the waters of Meribath Kadesh, and on the brook of Egypt as far as the Mediterranean Sea. This will be the southern side. On the west side, the Mediterranean Sea will be the border from the southern border up to a point opposite Lebo-hamath. This will be the western side. You are to divide this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. You will allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the aliens residing among you, who have fathered children among you. You will eat them, and you will treat them like native-born Israelites along with you. They will be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. In whatever tribe the alien resides, you will assign his inheritance there. This is the declaration of the Lord God. Now these are the names of the tribes, from the northern end, along the road of Hethlon, to Lebohamath, as far as Hazar Enon, at the northern border of Damascus, alongside Hamath, and extending from the eastern side of the sea, will be Dan, one portion. Next, to the territory of Dan, from the east side to the west, will be Asher, one portion. Next, to the territory of Asher, from the east side to the west, will be Naphtali, one portion. Next, to the territory of Naphtali, from the east side to the west, will be Manasseh, one portion. Next, to the territory of Manasseh, from the east side to the west, will be Ephraim, one portion. Next, to the territory of Ephraim, from the east side to the west, will be Reuben, one portion. Next, to the territory of Reuben, from the east side to the west, will be Judah, one portion. Next, to the territory of Judah, from the east side to the west, will be the portion you donate to the Lord, 8 1/3 miles wide, and as long as one of the tribal portions from the east side to the west. The sanctuary will be in the middle of it. The special portion will donate to the Lord. The special portion you donate to the Lord will be 8 1/3 miles long and 3 1/3 miles wide. This holy donation will be set apart for the priests alone. It will be 8 1/3 miles long on the northern side, 3 1/3 miles wide on the western side, 3 1/3 miles wide on the eastern side, and 8 1/3 miles long on the southern side. The Lord's sanctuary will be in the middle of it. It is for the consecrated priests, the sons of Zadok, who kept my charge and did not go astray as the Levites did when the Israelites went astray. It will be a special donation for them, out of the holy donation of the land, a most holy place adjacent to the territory of the Levites. Next to the territory of the priests, the Levites will have an area 8 1/3 miles long and 3 1/3 miles wide. The total length will be 8 1/3 miles and the width 3 1/3 miles. They must not sell or exchange any of it, and they must not transfer this choice part of the land, for it is holy to the Lord. The remaining area, 1 2/3 miles wide and 8 1/3 miles long, will be for common use by the city for both residential and open space. The city will be in the middle of it. These are the city's measurements: 1.5 miles on the north side, 1.5 miles on the south side, 1.5 miles on the east side, and 1.5 miles on the west side. The city's open space will extend 425 feet to the north, 425 feet to the south, 425 feet to the east, and 425 feet to the west. The remainder of the length alongside the holy donation will be 3 1/3 miles to the east and 3 1/3 miles to the west. It will run alongside the holy donation. Its produce will be food for the workers of the city. The city's workers from all the tribes of Israel will cultivate it. The entire donation will be 8 1/3 miles by 8 1/3 miles. You are to set apart the holy donation along with the city property as a square area. The remaining area on both sides of the holy donation and the city property will belong to the prince. He will own the land adjacent to the tribal portions next to the 8 1/3 miles of the donation as far as the eastern border, and next to the 8 1/3 miles of the donation as far as the western border. The holy donation in the sanctuary of the temple will be in the middle of it, except for the Levitical property and the city property in the middle of the area belonging to the prince. The area between the territory of Judah and that of Benjamin will belong to the prince. As for the rest of the tribes, from the east side to the west will be Benjamin, one portion. Next to the territory of Benjamin, from the east side to the west, will be Simeon, one portion. Next to the territory of Simeon, from the east side to the west, will be Issachar, one portion. Next to the territory of Issachar, from the east side to the west, will be Zebulun, one portion. Next to the territory of Zebulun, from the east side to the west, will be Gad, one portion. Next to the territory of Gad, toward the south side, the border will run from Tamar to the waters of Meribath Kadesh, to the brook of Egypt, and out to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the land you are to allot as an inheritance to Israel's tribes, and these will be their portions. This is the declaration of the Lord God. These are the exits of the city. On the north side, which measures 1.5 miles, there will be 3 gates facing north, the gates of the city being named for the tribes of Israel. 1, the gate of Reuben, 1, the gate of Judah, and 1, the gate of Levi. On the east side, which is 1.5 miles, there will be 3 gates. 1, the gate of Joseph, 1, the gate of Benjamin, and 1, the gate of Dan. On the south side, which measures 1.5 miles, there will be 3 gates. 1, the gate of Simeon, 1, the gate of Issachar, and 1, the gate of Zebulun. On the west side, which is 1.5 miles, there will be 3 gates. 1, the gate of Gad, 1, the gate of Asher, and 1, the gate of Naphtali. The perimeter of the city will be 6 miles, and the name of the city from that day on will be, the Lord is there.